Welcome back to the show. So let's talk about Instagram. Now, I know that you may feel overwhelmed about Instagram, or maybe you feel confused by it or frustrated or whatever. People definitely have a lot of feelings about Instagram, that's for sure. And it's usually some kind of mixture of love and hate. It can be so helpful for visibility and marketing your business, but I bet you have a lot of questions about how to optimize your use of Instagram and what to post and how often to post and all of those kinds of things. So that is why I've brought on a guest to the show today who is going to help break so much of this down. Tori Overmyer is a business coach and the founder of Thrive Business Development, and she loves to teach her audience about organic Instagram growth and social selling strategies without feeling salesy or uncomfortable. So I'm really excited for you to hear my conversation with Tori because I know that Instagram can cause a lot of confusion and frustration, and we are going to help you with that today. Well, hey, Tori, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to this conversation because this is a question that comes up all the time in my communities: how to stand out on Instagram and how to use it properly, in your business to help you market and all of that stuff. I know that my audience has just a ton of questions about how to do social media the right way without feeling like a slave to it and without feeling like they're doing a lot of things that they actually just don't want to do. I'm sure that you hear that too, Tori. So I am really excited to get into that. First, though, I would love for you to just give us a bit of context and tell us more about you and the work that you do in the world.
My name's Tori. I am the owner of Thrive Business Development. And at Thrive, we create programs and courses and education for online coaches and some online service providers. So anyone who has an online business, we can probably help. We help mostly through Instagram marketing. That's kind of my sweet spot and specialty. But I do help with other things too, like, actually creating your offers, building out your product suite, a little bit of email marketing, but Instagram is definitely what we mostly help people with.
That is so awesome. Yeah. So, and how did you get into that? I'm kind of curious, like, has Instagram always been your thing? Did you just naturally gravitate towards it? Or tell me a little bit more about the journey.
Yeah, I do feel like I kind of have always naturally gravitated towards it. I used to be a hairstylist, and when I did hair, I got pretty much all of my clients through Instagram. And I just thought that it was so much fun to showcase my work there and really figure out how to attract more clients that way. And so that's when I naturally started having other hairstylists reaching out for help from me. And from there, I realized that I could, have a business out of coaching people and coaching them with something that came kind of naturally to me, which was Instagram marketing. So that's where it kind of spiraled from there.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, very cool. So let's get into the topic then. Let's talk about Instagram. I would love if you could give me your thoughts on, well, how can coaches stand out on Instagram? I mean, Instagram is huge. There's a ton of people there. And I know that a lot of people wonder, well, how do I stand out amongst all of that?
Yes, this is one of my top questions, and also like top frustrations from people, I think, is feeling like it's impossible to stand out these days because our industries can feel very saturated. So I totally understand, but we still can stand out. And I think there are a few like kind of key points here when we're talking about standing out on Instagram. Number one is actually knowing your ideal client really well, because I think there are a lot of coaches in every industry, but not all of them understand their ideal client well enough to the point where they can create that really specific content that doesn't feel vague and like bland to people. So I think it really starts with knowing your ideal client so well that you can create that content that actually makes people go, whoa, it's like she's talking to me, right? The second thing I would say is being yourself. And I don't mean that in like a vague, cheesy way, but I mean really figure out like certain things about yourself or your life that you want to consistently share with your audience in a way that they will kind of start to get to like know you for that, right? So a really simple kind of funny example of that is I have always loved the Miley Cyrus song, We Can't Stop. And so every time I'm doing a launch of one of my offers, I put that song on all of my like story posts, and I'll get messages from people all the time being like, I heard that Miley Cyrus song and thought of you. So any like little things
great.
like that that you can kind of create that consistency around, it's like creating pieces of your brand, right? But like be very intentional with it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then thirdly, I would say, as far as standing out, just going back to that same idea of like making sure that you're being really intentional with your content and that it's not um, vanilla, and don't be afraid to be controversial sometimes. And that doesn't mean that you have to be mean or like political. There are plenty of ways that you can like state your opinions on things and kind of own your differentiators, right? Like own what makes you different from other people in your industry, and create content around that too. And really don't be afraid to stand out in that way. I always tell my clients, not every piece of content has to be for everyone, right? It should be for your people, not for the masses.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. And I mean, I certainly like through that, through all the things that you just described, the common thread that I heard in there is to just not be vanilla.
Yes.
Right? Don't be the same and bland and boring and in the middle, and showing up like everybody else. And I think that that's actually a trap that a lot of people fall into, is because you see these, influencers and, all kinds of people who've got huge followings and things. And you think, okay, well, that's how I need to show up. That's who I need to be. And so then there's like a whole bunch of copycat stuff that happens. And I actually think that a little bit of that is okay, just in the beginning, to kind of get your footing and to figure out even what to do on Instagram. But really, it's not about trying to be like other people, because that just means that if everybody's sharing the same stuff and having the same content, then that is just a nameless, faceless crowd of stuff that's coming out there. But really, like, owning your space. I love what you said about really being clear about who your person is. Don't try and appeal to everybody, but really create content with your ideal client in mind and bring out your unique authenticity.
Mm-hmm. I really like what you said about it's kind of okay in the beginning. I think that's actually a great point, that like in the beginning when it feels really unnatural, it's okay if you have accounts that you look up to and kind of like use them as inspiration. But yeah, throughout your journey, really allowing yourself to find your voice and like being aware of that too. But I love that point that you made.
Yeah, because I think that your voice, it evolves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just like anything, with writing or with doing videos, or really even just your business, it kind of evolves and becomes so much more specific to you, who you are, who you're helping. And so your word there, allowing it to be, that's exactly it. Rather than trying to keep yourself pinned in this one little box of how you think you're supposed to show up on Instagram, but allow you to really come out. So those are just such great tips. I love that. So I'm kind of curious, what kind of content are people? So, if people are, understanding the general concept of like how to show up, how to be unique on the platform and really be authentic and let their true colors shine. But what kind of stuff, like what kind of content can generate the best results while still being aligned to your values and your authentic self and that kind of thing? So what should people be posting about?
Well, one really good, easy place to start is going back to what I said before about how important it is to know your ideal client. A really great exercise is to figure out your ideal client's struggles and desires and be very specific about those. So, what I like to have my clients do is write down, like, let's say, 5 of their ideal client struggles, 5 of their desires, but then break that down even more and write down how those struggles actually present themselves in their day to day life and how that person feels when they're experiencing them. And this is a really great place to start your content from, because if you can speak in your content to those specific struggles and desires of that person, that's that kind of content that I was saying is going to make them go, wow, I feel really seen and heard. So that's like a really good baseline to start out with, is make sure you're very clear on that and kind of create content from there.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. And then what about like, I know that I think I know the answer to this, but I'm just going to get your take on this anyway. Do you need to have the perfect feed? Like, do you need to cultivate this absolutely flawless aesthetic for your Instagram feed? Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
I get asked this question all the time, and it's still one of my favorite questions because I think the answer is like a huge relief to people. It's completely up to you.
Hmm.
I do not believe that you have to have a perfect feed in order to be successful on Instagram, but I also am not like against it and don't think that it's a waste of time. I think it's completely
Mm.
up to you and your brand. This is what's so great about Instagram is it all comes back to the same thing, right? Of like stand out by being yourself, finding your voice and creating your brand. If your brand is like, I don't care what my feed looks, it's messy all the time, half of it is like selfies I took myself, then keep doing that and just like be consistent with it. I am someone who I like love aesthetics, and I think that it's fun to create an Instagram feed that's very like on brand and in my brand colors and all of that. So that's what I do, and I love it. I think it's fun. If you don't enjoy that and that's not part of your brand, then you absolutely don't have to in order to have success on the app.
That's great advice. And you're right, totally relieving to hear because yeah, I mean, it's not wrong to want to have an Instagram feed, and if it's that's really highly curated and is following a specific aesthetic, and because it's a creative process too, and you're allowed to have that and want to create that too, and especially if it's on brand and authentic. But for those of us who that would not be authentic, and wouldn't feel right, and all of that kind of thing, or it's just too much effort to put into, or anything like that, then that's okay. It's not required, right? As long as you're I think it comes down to as long as you're being intentional about it, like making the decision about what is right for you and for your business and for your brand.
Yes, it's more about being intentional and consistent with whatever you decide. It's not that like one way or the other is wrong. But I will say one tip that I think is really helpful for those of you listening who are like me, maybe, and do lean more towards like curating your feed. I try to be a lot more fun and kind of uncurated in my Instagram stories because I do think there's
Mm,
something to be said for letting people see, a real side of you, and really
yeah.
letting them feel like it builds trust that way. So if you are going to go the more curated route with your feed, don't be afraid to have fun in your stories, and that doesn't have to be as curated. It's kind of what stories are for.
Yeah, that's a great tip because people do love that actually. Don't you find like to really they kind of see it's like this peeking back behind the curtain. They get to see like the behind the scenes stuff. Everybody loves a good behind the scenes
Yes.
kind of thing. So yeah, I love that. So even though you might have a very curated feed, but then your stories absolutely don't have to be so like picture perfect. It can be a lot more kind of raw and personal and that kind of thing.
Yep.
That's great to know. Let's talk about reels for a second because of course this is the new-ish, I mean not totally new, but newish thing on Instagram. And tell me about that. What are your thoughts? What's your take on reels? Do people have to do reels to stay relevant on Instagram right now? What's going on with reels?
So I have what I would say maybe an unpopular opinion on Reels.
Okay,
um,
awesome. Let's hear it.
I will say, I think just like with everything sort of that we've been talking about so far, it's more about figuring out your brand and staying true to yourself. Because I think what happened is Reels came out and everyone felt like they had to become an entertainer because I mean, that's what Reels were created for. They actually base how they rank Reels off of how entertaining or not they are. So
Mm,
you do kind of have to find a way to be entertaining if you want your reels to be successful. And so I think a lot of people were like, oh crap, I have to learn how to like do these TikTok dances now. And then there were a bunch of us super awkward, totally not,
yes.
authentic to us, trying to like force these awkward dances. And it's like, we don't need to do that. If you love dancing and that works for you, by all means do it. I love watching them. But if that doesn't work for you, don't feel like you have to jump on every single trend that, comes out, because this won't be the last one. Instagram is going to keep evolving and changing. And I think it's better to find a way to stay true to your brand and use the tools that they give us. Use the ones that work for you and don't feel like you have to use the ones that don't.
I love that. That's great to hear. And certainly also is going to be a big relief for people who I mean, you're right. Like, I love it when people do a great reel. I mean, it's very entertaining and it's really fun, but I have certainly seen a lot of incredibly awkward reels out there that are very cringy, and you just don't want to have that, as part of your brand, I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
But it's like people feel like you have to do that to stay relevant and to stay competitive. It's a terrible feeling. To feel like you have to show up in a way. Again, it like really goes against exactly what we've been talking about, is being authentic and intentional for you and your brand and how you want to show up. So that's a big relief. What about video though in general? Like, I heard that the powers that be on Instagram have recently said that Instagram is no longer a photo sharing app, it's video content now. Tell me about video on Instagram.
Yes, I'm actually glad you brought up that exact quote, because I remember the day that I think it was the Adam guy who said that. He's like big on Instagram, and he said Instagram is no longer a photo sharing app, and I think like everyone went wild. But he actually came back on later to clarify and said it still is also a photo sharing app. It's just not just a photo sharing app. And I think that's something for us to all take a deep breath about. So
definitely,
he wasn't saying never post a still photo again and only post reels. It's just they are putting a heavy emphasis on creating, more space for video content too. And video content is doing really well. So, and there are still perks of reels too. It's one of the number one ways to get new followers to see you. So again, if you can find a way to make reels work for you, I'm not saying don't do it, but there are other ways that we can utilize video too. Like we've talked about, Instagram stories is my favorite. I'm on my stories every day. I only post to my feed maybe like 2 to 3 times a week, but I'm on my stories all the time, and it's a great way to connect. Even like going live is great, and then sharing those videos. You can even just post videos straight from your phone that aren't reels. So like you could, do like some sort of mini training or something and post that to your feed. So there are plenty of ways to utilize video, and I highly recommend getting comfortable with video on Instagram in some form.
Yeah. And I think the key phrase there is in some form. It doesn't have to be the same as everybody else, and really starting with the form that you can start with, and then kind of expanding and playing with it from there. And I think it needs to be fun, right? Like, what's the point if it's not fun? So yeah, embracing the fun side of it, I think, is important.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
you also mentioned, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say it can be easier too. So sometimes I think when we say like create videos, it can feel really overwhelming and like, oh my gosh, now I have to go record all these videos. One of my clients right now had this genius idea, because for one of her coaching programs, she records a bunch of videos for her clients, and that's how she gets them. Instead of doing live calls, it's like pre-recorded videos. And so she takes clips from those videos and turns them into reels. So you can find ways to even repurpose things so that it doesn't have to feel like this additional task.
Yeah, because that's a big problem. That's a big hurdle for many people, is feeling like, where am I meant to find the time to do all of this creation for the Instagram platform? Like, how am I going to? So now I have to do this, and I have to create videos, and never mind the running of the actual business, right? So I love that. That's a genius idea. Just take some video content that you've already created, maybe for a different purpose, and then just clip it, take little pieces or whatever you have to do, and post it out. So one thing that you mentioned a couple minutes ago is the frequency, like how frequently you're posting on your feed and how frequently in your stories. Can you talk to us a little bit about what are some best practices here? Like, for coaches and service providers, like, how often do you need to be posting to your feed and to your stories and all of that?
Unfortunately, I feel like this is one of those questions that does not have a clear black and white answer because I know there are a lot of um, other business coaches or social media experts who will say like post every single day, or they'll even say post multiple times a day. And there are so many strategies like that that do work for some people, and they do end up growing a lot because of that. Um, but in order for that to work, the content not only has to be posted a lot, but it needs to be really, really good content. And that can take a lot of energy. So, because most of the people that I work with, their main goal is to get clients, it's not to get a huge following. Um, so, if we look at that being the goal, then I try to base their social media strategy off of that. And so to keep things as simple for them as possible, I do usually recommend, 1 to, let's say, 4 feed posts a week, whatever you feel like you can pump out and still have it be really good, impactful content, but be really active on your stories. And I also encourage people to take breaks and have really healthy boundaries with Instagram. So I always
Mm-hmm.
have one day a week, usually Saturdays or Sundays, where I'm not on at all. Sometimes I even delete the app off my phone so that I'm not tempted to tap it. And I encourage my clients to do the same. So, again, I think it's really about your goals, and kind of figuring out a strategy that works for you from there.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So when you say like be really active in your stories, so let's say you're posting 2 times a week on Instagram, like that's what you've decided you can manage and that's what feels good and you can sustain that. But what does be really active on your stories mean? Can you unpack that a little bit for me?
Yes. So it's hard to say, like, post 10 times a day on your stories because it's so different if you're posting, let's say, like, of you talking, then of course it's maybe going to be more. And it depends on like what you're doing in your stories. But being really active to me in your stories means at least showing up in some way on your stories 6 days a week, and that's with your own content, not just sharing from other people's profiles. So that means like maybe it's a picture of your coffee, maybe it's your to-do list, maybe it's you talking, um, maybe it's your dog, maybe it's, a trip you're going on, maybe it's selling, right? Can't forget about that. Maybe it's talking about your services or talking about a client, sharing a client phone call, sharing a client's wins. These are all just ideas. Um, so it will look different depending on, which one of those you're doing, but just be intentional about showing up consistently in there.
Okay, that's great. Those are good guidelines. And actually, I want to circle back to something else that you mentioned is the goal of getting clients. This is not about like growing a massive feed so that you can have a whole bunch of vanity numbers and like a big following, but is really all about, and definitely my audience, that's the goal too, for sure. So how do you create content? So if we're not, it feels like then maybe if our goal is not to just blow up our feed and get a whole bunch of followers, but really we need to convert those followers into clients. How do you create content that is aligned with that specific goal?
Yes. So this has like completely come full circle now because again, it all comes back to knowing your ideal client really well because the goal is to get clients. So you need to be speaking to those potential clients in basically everything that you create. So again, knowing their struggles, their desires, how they feel, how you can really speak to them. Educate them too. So a lot of it is also about kind of like proving that you have what can help them, right? So educational content is great. But really, yeah, knowing your ideal client like the back of your hand is like the basis of all of this.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of people have a struggle with the striking the balance between like sharing and providing value and selling, right? Having some kind of call to action where you actually are promoting your program, your services, something like that. So do you have suggestions or guidelines on how to strike that right balance? Because I know that awful lot of people have just feel really don't want to show up there and be salesy all the time. So tell me about that. How do you help people find strike the right balance?
Yes. So I have some thoughts on this. Number one is I say, do not be afraid of being salesy. If you are a coach or an online service provider, and that's what your Instagram page is here for, that's what you're here for. And people know what they're going to get. And if you don't sell your services, no one is going to buy them. And that's just the truth. So kind of figure out a way to throw your fear of being salesy out the window, because you could sell every day. And if you were my client, I would be like, heck yeah, go get them. Like, there is nothing wrong with selling as much as you want. That's what we're here for. But I will also say, the way that I think, at least I kind of find a balance, I actually use a specific launch strategy. And this is something that I teach my clients too. So when I'm launching, when I'm like opening the doors to a program and like trying to get a lot of people in at once, that's when I'm selling like every single day. That's when I have those hard call to actions, right? In between launches, I will close the doors to certain programs, and that's when I will go heavier on that like educational, free value, that type of content. And so it does, when you are using like an actual launch and then, off launch kind of schedule, it does naturally kind of help you create that balance.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. Absolutely. So it doesn't always have to be like every week it's the same mixture, because you can be in more like promotional launch phases and then phases like or seasons where you are not actively promoting or launching things. But I 100% agree with you that like do not be afraid of selling. That's what you're here for. And
Yes.
of course for me, like you don't want to be every single day, like just only promoting and selling, because that's going to attract, I guess, it's just going to have a different vibe. But at the same time, like the flip side of that is don't be afraid of, like, it doesn't have to be all value all the time. Like you
Yes.
can't like sharing and education and all that kind of stuff. And I know that a lot of people hesitate to promote themselves or sell themselves or have a call to action because they don't want people to unsubscribe or to unfollow and that kind of thing. But what I usually say is like if your audience has zero tolerance for you selling like at any time, then they're never going to become clients anyway. And so what is the point of you, like, you don't need those people in your follower list, because they're just, if they cannot tolerate you at all being promotional and talking about your services and how you help people, which really, that's a form of service too, right? Like it's, you're because that you can serve people at a much higher level if they actually work with you.
Yep.
So, so that, I think you're right. Like striking the right balance. Don't be afraid of it. And then maybe sort of embrace that seasonal approach. Like if you're launching and it's all in.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that was a great point that you brought up too. I do think, as far as like the fear of selling goes, it's interesting too, because I think for me personally, I try to think like, was there a time that I was ever annoyed by someone for selling? And no. And then when I ask my clients that who are afraid of it too, they're like, well, I can't really think of it, but I just feel like I will be annoying. And it's like,
Yes.
I think we've all kind of made up this fear that there might not be that much evidence behind.
That's a good point. That's a really excellent point. Yeah, because of course, I mean, there are some people out there who have no tolerance for being sold to, or anything like that. But it's probably a pretty small percentage, and we don't need to worry about them. Because they're on Instagram for totally different reasons, right? Like they are there for something entirely different than what you can provide. So yeah. Can you tell me just a little bit about advertising? Like, can you really achieve all these things with Instagram on strictly an organic approach? I know that many of my community members had this concern that really, in order to get traction, they need to be using paid advertising. Or can you get traction through organic only? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, because I actually just recently started getting into paid ads for myself. So I will use myself as an example in the fact that I have gotten my coaching business to multiple six figures with completely organic at this point. And I get almost all of my clients from Instagram. Some I get from like word of mouth from them, but I don't get clients from any other app or anything. So that's all from organic Instagram. And that's what, I teach my clients to do too. So I completely subscribe to the idea that you can totally do it organically. I would actually argue that you should do it organically first and make sure that it works, because ads are wild. Now that I'm getting into them, I'm like, this is like, I think it's one of those things that maybe people think they can like put some money into and it'll be like quick results, and it is not at all. They are actually like really hard to see success from. And I think the only way you're going to see success from them is if you already know that people really want what you're selling. And you're not going to know that unless you try it organically first.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, this has been amazing, Tori. You've shared so much value here. Tell us where people can go to connect with you and learn more about your work.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kim. It was really fun. If you want to connect more with me, you can follow me on Instagram at Thrive Business Development. And if you go to the link in my bio there, or maybe you'll put it in the show notes for me, I also have a free masterclass that tells you, I basically break down how I hit my first $100,000 in my coaching business. So I have that free masterclass available for everyone as well.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I will definitely put those links in the show notes for sure. Before I let you go, Tori, I would love to just ask you one last question. If you were going to share like one key takeaway from our conversation today, or maybe just the very first step that our audience should do right now, what would you say? What would that be?
Oh, yes. Okay. So first, I would say do what I said about the ideal client work and write down, like go right now and write down 5 struggles, desires, how those actually show up in their life and how they feel when they're experiencing them. After that, I would say if you are just taking your like first steps to start promoting your business more on Instagram, create some content buckets for yourself. So figure out 5 business related content buckets. So things related to your business that you want to make sure to consistently create content around. And then 5 personal ones too. And when I say personal, I don't mean they have to be like these deep, dark secrets that you feel uncomfortable talking about. It can be like, your dog or whatever, but 5
Right.
personal things that you want to create content around too. That way, if you have that ideal client work and those content buckets, you have a really great place to start and just create from there.
Yeah, I love that. Those are very actionable, very easy first steps to take. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Tori. This has been really fun. Thank you again for sharing your advice and your guidance. This has been great.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay, well, that does it. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation, and I hope that you are feeling much more positive and even excited about your Instagram strategy, and that you have more clarity about what you actually need to do. I would love to hear from you on this. Do you use Instagram for your business? Has your strategy been working so far? And if not, what's the very first thing that you are going to change or take action on? Let me know in the comments below this video. Or of course, if you're listening to the audio of this episode, then just go ahead and find me on Instagram and let me know. Okay, that is what I have got for you today. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you again very soon.